Welcome to Medic Life, a video podcast for EMS professionals with your host, John Newton.
Welcome to another episode of Medic Life. See a little guy down there in the bottom? You're going to see him pop up a couple of times. This is Bruce Hoffman. He is a nurse and paramedic and does critical care when he's not hanging out and educating folks. And he is with me tonight, guys, to talk about Narcan. Been a lot of discussion here lately about Narcan in the public, about Narcan for different levels of provider, and even our police officers and our firefighters. And I hate to say untrained, but those folks who don't really have medical training, more or less just firefighter training. So, and we have a good mix of group. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and say hi to everybody, Bruce.
Hey guys, this is Bruce Hoffman. John, thanks for the nice introduction. It's good to be here. Looking forward to a discussion on Narcan. Like you say, it's a popular topic right now. It's in the news. It's in the EMS news circuit, and it's a good topic. It warrants discussion. So I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, Bruce, thanks for being here, man. Thanks for doing this for me. This is our first live episode, so I hope this works out. Maybe some folks will join in here a little later. But I think we'll just start with some of the things that's been in the news. And it was good that you mentioned that. Today is some prep. I was just sort of kind of looking through news articles, and I was really surprised at how many at the state level we have politicians really kind of coming out in support of the public being able to buy Narcan over the counter.
Right.
There's quite a few states that you can just go down to your local CVS, your Walgreens, and walk up to the counter, no questions asked. I don't know. I think that's a good thing. What about you? What is your opinion on that?
So I think it's one of those topics, that really requires kind of some knowledge before we go ahead and make conclusions. I know that there's a lot of people that have a lot of opinions about it. Certainly some that are pro Narcan, kind of being dispersed to the public, and then some that directly oppose it. I think one of the first places to start is, and this comes from a little bit of history and background that I have with working with some of the legislators and things like that. It's really good if they're educated from a clinical perspective, but then they blend that with some personal stories. I think sometimes it can be very, very biased if they're only hearing one track or another, and that can sway them to make decisions one way or the other. I think
you're talking about legislators and their personal knowledge is what you're talking about, correct? Not the lay person out there buying it.
No, the legislators that are going to enable the law to make the lay people come in and purchase it. So I think that's really where it starts. They need to be thoroughly educated about what the drug is, what it does, what's its specific population. But then in terms, once that passes, if a state decides to do it, my personal opinion is that it is a good thing, because a lot of these people suffering from, whether it's legal or illegal drug, or prescriptions, it's good that I think their families be allowed to help them out. I do see that it is a potential for some abuse and almost the promulgation of an abuse kind of situation. But overall, I think it's a good thing. Addiction is something real, and we need to be able to deal with that. And I think this is one avenue that allows us to help with that.
So 2 points that you just made, and these are things that I've seen in recent articles and a lot of things that's been discussed in a couple of different states. And the biggest argument always is that it's going to invite more people to do drugs. And statistically speaking, if you look at the data that's been collected in places like Ohio and Indiana, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York. They're basically seeing these people that are actually using it, buying it over the counter. These are first-time users that are overdosing. So that's one argument.
Right.
The other thing is, how do we educate the public? How do we educate the public and make them aware that this is not a one-time dose?
Right.
In some cases, these patients are, if it's their first time, they've really overdosed, and this is only going to kind of bring them around temporarily, and then they're going to rebound. How do you think we educate the public?
Well, I think you mentioned a very good point, and that is we've been collecting a lot of good data. So I think the first thing to go out there is that this has been studied, this has been looked at. This is not something that was given a 30-second kind of, look and then said, oh, hey, we should start doing it. I think it's been really well supported by data research. Again, you mentioned like Ohio, Indiana, certainly New Jersey, New York, Connecticut has certainly participated in that. But I think that's kind of the first step, is to really say there is good evidence behind this that supports it. I think the other way is for EMS crews, and this goes kind of beyond Narcan, but we can use it as kind of an analogy. We have community kind of paramedicine that's making a little bit of a resurgence. And starting to come into play. And I think we as EMS providers have a huge role in that, to educate the patients as we go and see them, hand out pamphlets, allow them to ask questions and give sincere answers, instead of kind of, hey, we just have to go to our next call type of thing. If that is the role, really do it justice to educate the patients and their families really well.
So I asked you about actually educating the public, but the big discussion and the big debate, and the thing that a lot of people within EMS have a problem with, is basic EMTs and firefighters using this. And these are people who actually, and police officers, sorry, I didn't mean to leave you guys out, but these guys actually get formal training. They don't just go, okay, here's a box full of Narcan, have at it, good luck with you. They're actually getting formal training. Why do you think that we have more of an objection to educated providers utilizing something versus maybe not the public so much, who don't get as much training or education?
Right. I think that's a very interesting question. In terms of, again, you say police officers, firefighters, EMT basics. I think there comes a point where we start to develop and almost train educators that are like, or providers that are like right on the cusp. They know just enough to really help people out, but maybe not too much to the point where they don't understand the full effect of what they're doing. And not to say that firefighters or EMTs or police officers are singly in that category, but it's almost easier to teach a layperson, be like, hey, these are the simple instructions. Pop the calf off, jab it into the leg and hold it there, kind of thing, like we did with epinephrine pens. You almost see better success with that than you do maybe an EMT who never gets to experience giving somebody live an auto injector for like an epinephrine pen, right? So there's kind of, that's just a different spin on it. I don't know, and in some cases it's probably safer to have the family, the public who are really not 100% educated about something, do a really good thing. We saw that kind of also with automated external defibrillators being placed in airports and things like that, public access areas, and it's been really, really successful.
So you mentioned, and it really has, so let's go back to the route of administration. You mentioned the actual auto injectors and things like that. Mm-hmm. So for paramedics and some places even advanced EMTs have the ability to start an IV and give it intravenously. But we're starting to see, because of a safety factor with a lot of medications we're doing, even Narcan has fallen into this realm of that nasal, that mist. You just stick something in their nose, squirt it up there. You're laughing. That's funny.
And hope for the best, right?
And sometimes, yes. So basic EMTs, I think that, and this is my personal, and I would like to get your opinion, but I think basic EMTs should have that ability to be able to administer that mad nasal dose of Narcan, but also, so we'll take a step back and talk about what's actually out on the market.
Sure.
For us, there's like, well, I just mentioned the ability to actually atomize it. We can give it IV. Some places actually do have the resources or have the auto injectors available for certain levels. Mm-hmm. But there's actually, and a lot of people don't know this, it's a different company. So AviQ kind of patented this thing for your EpiPen, your talking EpiPen. It's this little box and it says, pull off the tab, stick it to your leg, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Well, a different company, I think it's called Evio, or is that correct?
It's I think it's Envio or something like that.
Yeah.
I saw it's or Evzio, EVZIO, I think it is.
Yeah, something like that.
Yep.
But they have one too. Mm-hmm. And first, so I guess, what is your opinion about maybe the public being more relegated to only having certain options for routes? And what is your opinion about basic EMTs and their routes, maybe preferences? What do you think would be a better choice for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So when when Narcan first came out, we typically only thought of it as being given really intravenously or even intramuscularly. Now we know that we can give it subcutaneously, really without too many issues. Even those that are on like methadone and things like that, it may even require an infusion and an intravenous infusion. I think as we have pushed into the public access market, I do believe, I think that there should only be a select variety of routes that they should be allowed to administer. There is a reason, right, that we are trained as paramedics and EMTs and we go to school for this stuff. So, it's kind of that case where, why have physicians if we have WebMD? That kind of same classic question. Yeah. There's a reason that we're trained. So I think like the Evzio auto injector or the kind of the talking box, similar to what we see in public access AEDs, I think that would be perfect for the layperson. I think the EMTs can certainly take one more step beyond that and really have maybe an auto injector plus the nasal, atomizer devices and things like that. But what I'm not a fan of is giving people the tools that they need and not supporting it with the necessary guidelines or education, or just the opposite, having guidelines and policies or protocols in place, but then not having the tools to actually carry it out or to carry it out in a dangerous way. So I think for the layperson, I'm not a fan of having them administer Narcan nasally, but certainly that would be a very good option for EMT basics. Another thing that I would add is kind of like we have to go back to the conversation of people or EMTs saying we absolutely need to have Narcan, and they're pounding their fists on the table. We don't want to wait for ALS. We don't want to do this. And yet we know that kind of the opioid toxidrome is really best treated essentially with a bag valve mask, and a little bit of airway support, and that bringing about some similar effects until you really can get to a place where Narcan is available or something like that. So for the layperson, I think the auto injectors are a great idea. Certainly with the EpiPens and the talking epinephrine pens, that has gone over reasonably well. And I think the same thing with Narcan. But for the EMT-Basic, I think certainly having the atomizers are perfectly safe. If there is the correct guideline, oversight, and then certainly education to support it.
Thanks for watching part 1. My name is John Newton. Don't forget to follow us in part 2 as we continue this discussion on Narcan in the public and for providers.